Thank you. Welcome, everybody. And good morning. Good morning. What an entrance. What an entrance. Well, David and I on stage, if you guys know, David and I, we're working together, which is, for me, is fantastic. We have this podcast together we're working on as well with other two guys, amazing people. So we're having a lot of fun. So for me, it's always a pleasure to be speaking at HIP. And when I know about this one here in Charleston, David, you got to come. It's cool, right?
Yeah. I got to say, so what was hilarious about that intro is he literally just practiced that for like 2 minutes before we came on stage. But yes, listen, it's really cool to be here in Charleston. This is my first time in Charleston. So it's a beautiful city. I definitely want to come back. And first time coming to this conference, and I'm glad I'm here. And so I do have a funny story for all of you, and Enrique, you as well, because you didn't get a chance to get here last night. So the event last night was pretty cool. So on my way to the event, I caught the shuttle, and I got there a little bit later. So I was on the shuttle by myself. So I get in the shuttle, the driver's telling me, he goes, "Oh, do you know about where you're going?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Oh yeah, it's the old city jail. It's been around since the 1800s. He goes, "Yeah, it's the most haunted place in America." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Mind you, I'm on this shuttle by myself. And so then he starts going down like this really dark road. I'm like, "Cool, man." He's like, "Yeah, man, it's, a lot of people died there and it's really haunted." And then as we're turning down, he goes, "Yeah, and it's really interesting that your company decided to book it here considering what happened last year." I'm sorry, what? So at this point, I'm like, I've seen way too many of these shows. It's like, I'm not taking this bait. I immediately take out my phone. I text my girlfriend. I was like, "If I die, it happened here." And I'm like, I'm that guy. I'm like, somebody's getting punched in the face tonight, because this is setting up to be one of those things where they do the whole punk thing and something like that jumps out. So I was like, if somebody jumps out and does something, I'm punching it, immediately turn around and running, because I was like, if I step off of this bus and they're like, it's actually in the jail, I'm not doing that. I'm turning back around. I'm getting on this bus. I'm going back to the hill. Luckily, it was outside. Had a good time. No, I did not take the tour. I do not play around with ghosts. So anyway, nothing to do with identity security. Let's get to the trends. There you go. That's what you missed out on last night.
Man, you give me a lot of fun, because I missed the party last night. I just arrived last night. But I want to address one thing, because, guys, we have on stage here the Identity Jedi, that's why, come on, David. So I had to wear my shirt with my favorite Star Wars character. And by the way, what I'm trying to do here is advocating. By the way, I don't bring up politics, commentary a lot in presentations like this, but I have to say this. I want to advocate for Greedos, because we all know, hand shot first. And I want to bring that hashtag back, hand shot first. And I think it builds that character. And I think we're taking away from both Greedo and Han Solo. Anyway, welcome, everybody. It's going to be a very cool session. And when I say Star Wars, I want us to start by thinking, are we repeating the same mistakes from the past? When we think about identity security, we see this new generation of attacks, this next generation of threats that we have to fight against. Are we honestly trying to fight that with last generation type of controls?
No.
That's what I want us to start thinking about when we have this conversation this morning with you. When we talk about IGA, for example, how many of organizations still do a lot of manual onboarding of things, connecting with disconnected apps, manually writing policies and roles, this type of stuff, is still very last gen. So we gotta speed that up, because fighting in this next generation space battle with stick and stones, it only works in movies, right? And it only works in the movies because if you look at what's happening with AI and a bunch of other things happening in our lives, those forces are quite strong in 2025 and going in 2026. We're talking about the excitement that we all had perhaps 2 years ago with AI, now giving space to more concerns and problems and fears about adoption in AI. So this whole hype cycle, right? So we're going through a very interesting stage that we realize not the limitations, but also the risks of AI. But also all this uncertainty, volatility in economics, the whole tariffs thing. Just yesterday, my prime minister from Canada was meeting with Donald Trump. Yeah, wow, I didn't expect that reaction.
It's Blue Jay.
On tariffs. But, and then visibility. And this visibility gap, which is not only exclusive in identity, but throughout cybersecurity. How many of your clients, my clients, organizations out there, they tell us, Enrique, well, it's still a problem. I don't know what I don't know. How can I control what I can't see? It's still a very prevalent challenge today in 2025. And the whole disinformation security with deepfakes and all that new generation of technology, bringing perhaps a demand for more than just authentication and authorization, but a quest for intent. What I mean by that is when we launch AI agents to do things, it's more and perhaps as equal in terms of importance, understanding what was the intent of AI in doing some things, just when we think about guardrails and stuff like that. Was the intent malicious? Was the intent just a hallucination? And of course, this hybrid intelligence. We have artificial intelligence and we have real intelligence. We bring the real things. So it's inevitable. I am facing this today. I can guarantee a lot of you are facing this today. I have already added a few team members to my team. They're just AI. They are synthetic. They are robots. They are augmenting my own team at Savient. But at the same time, it could be an employee working with you or a colleague, an artificial intelligent colleague working with you. I think our lives will change a lot in the next few months and years. And with that change, what we saw, and I remember perhaps a couple years ago when I was still at Gartner and we claiming a seat at the table of cybersecurity. When I say we, I mean we, identity practitioners. What is the big change in our reality today in terms of identity is that identity not only got that seat, but it got the best seat in the house. We got the largest seat in identity, got the largest seat in cybersecurity. It's interesting to see and to think about that because if we remember all the waves that we went through from mainframes, switching to decentralized or distributed computing in data centers, to the first generation of cloud. Cloud, damn it, it's 25 years old already. And then AI. What's the only constant? Of all those waves, they come, they shift, they change. The only constant, right, David, is identity. I use the analogy today, is if all those waves are happening around us, identity is that surfboard. You can use that if you want. What's interesting in identity, and you may have seen vendors, but also clients talking more identity security, is that besides the traditional controls of access, authentication, authorization, governance, we have added these protection controls, which is, by the way, the theme of this conference, right? Hybrid identity protection. So the protection layers in both prevention, detection, and response, those are brand new things. I would say perhaps 3-year-old, 4-year-old type of concepts that we started talking about. And it's interesting to think about this constant of identity is because, well, number one, attackers already figured that out. Yes, they can go in through endpoints, through data or apps, but they know the big honeypot is the identity. So attackers know that. But also CISOs, they realized that as well. It's almost like if you are into sci-fi, right? So identity is that portal. It's everything needs to go through identity to get access to any asset. to data points, to endpoints, to data, to apps, to cloud. It has to go through identity. And when we think about identity and the amount of pressure in protecting that, so think about that, protecting identity. At the same time, our leaders in our organizations, they pressure us to make a decision super fast about AI adoption. It is this, that's the sentiment, all right, of fear of making the wrong decision under pressure, but it's also the fear of not making a decision and missing the boat. It is a very interesting but delicate balance here in that pressure, the pressure cook moment of, yes, you got to move fast, you got to adopt AI, but are we protecting identity as fast as we are adopting AI? And that's where the pressure is coming from. And when I say adoption of AI, not only as a tool, like I said, we are already using this every day. If we're not using, we're missing out. There's pretty cool stuff we can do with AI as a tool, as an augmentation of what we can do. But also, and you know this, we are looking at AI as an additional layer of abstraction on top of everything. It's another layer on top of operating systems, on top of cloud services. Now we have an AI layer, which is an attack layer, but it's also a layer for business enablement. So, this keynote here today, this presentation that Dave and I will be talking to you today is about turning that volatility, that pressure, into momentum. When we think about identity security, I want us to think about identity security as the operating system for resilience. That means 3 big pillars sustaining identity security in 2025 and 2026. The visibility, right? We can't control what we can't see, and then becoming more adaptable with that. Adjusting, rolling back and forth, right? Speaking of rolling back and forth, I think it was a study from MIT that 95% of AI or Gen AI projects failed in terms of returning of investments on Gen AI. So that's pretty scary. How we move fast with something that fails 95% of the time. So that adaptability is a very key element of this identity security as an operating system for resilience. And of course, trust. How do we trust the intent? How do we trust not only who we are and we authenticate who we are, but what's the intent behind of what we're doing? So those are the 3 pillars that are going to shape the 5 big trends in 2026. There are 5 things. So I think now we can start this session with you guys. When we think about the 5 things shaping the future of identity security, or not only the future, but this is the present of identity security, those are the 5 top things that David and I, when we're putting together this research behind the presentation, we saw, yes, there's no way to deny how important and how strong those forces are. When we think about platformization, right, the promise of that single pane of glass, that's the visibility pillar. Or when you think about the rise of MCP, how we can interact agent-to-agent communications, how we interact with agents, how we interact with AI, that's about adaptability. Other modern challenges around machine identity management, that's all about the trust. Well, visibility is visibility. And the last one is the AI governance is also about trust. Right, Dave?
Absolutely. So when we started to break down these trends, right, and over the last, kind of day and a half, through some of the sessions and conversations that I've been having, with people here, it's The saying, like, the more things change, the more things stay the same, like, keeps resonating with me because it's kind of what we're going through right now, right? And we're going to walk through some of these things for the trends, but the one thing that I would think that I would want, all of you to kind of take with this is, as we talk about the things that are coming, it becomes even more and more imperative that some of the basics and the fundamentals that we know today, like, have to be put in place, right? And we have to continue to double down on getting those things because these trends are going to be built on top of those. And if we don't focus on those, some of these trends are just going to exacerbate some of the same problems that we currently see that we struggle with, right? For those of us that have been around, identity long enough to be graced with some of these nice wisdom hairs, you guys know some of the things that, we're talking about. All right, so the first trend, right, is platformization 2.0. Again, for those of us that have been around, we're familiar with this nice little pendulum swing that we've seen in security, but you can also say, for the most part, technology, which is, at some point we say, oh, listen, we want everything in this nice single pane of glass. Give me everything in one thing. I just want one interface to log into. We hear this from customers all the time. And the reason is always usually around the same, right? It's because, hey, I want, the integration costs are just way too much. I don't want to integrate a whole bunch of different products together. I want, one place for, training for my workers to be able to use one system. And we've seen this happen a couple of different times over the last, 2 decades when it comes to identity. We're starting to see it come around again, right? 80% of organizations are saying they want this. And when we look at identity, it's because over the last decade, we've seen really, really pain when it comes to integration costs with trying to integrate all these different identity platforms. If we look at just 2025 alone, 16 different acquisitions, over $26 billion spent in those acquisitions. So I'm going to give you a hint. When somebody spends $26 billion, that's usually a trend that is going to continue, right? Now, most of us are security people in here, right? I can't sit here and tell you that there's going to be one single, platform to rule them all. I just can't. The security guy in me is not going to tell you that, yes, there's going to be one single platform that's all going to solve everything, right? Otherwise, companies like Semperis wouldn't exist, because then, like, what's going to be your backup, right? We just believe in the fact that at some point something's going to go wrong. We believe in no single points of failure. So what does that mean for companies when you look at this? Yes, platforms are going to get created, right? And to an extent, I think that's going to make sense. There are going to be some things that need to be contained together. Some things do make sense better together. For organizations, what to do going forward as you look at this trend is think about what you need, right? Start making actual business decisions and driven conversations around when we look across our business and what we're trying to accomplish, and we look at the technology that we do have, what makes sense for us to combine together? What makes sense to look at some of our vendors and say, strategically, if we're running these operations, what can we get together in one vendor? What makes sense to separate? Newsflash, some of our favorite little tools that we use, we may have to let go because we may have to go consolidate into that vendor because it just makes sense from an OpEx standpoint or a CapEx standpoint to have those in one platform. And it's those type of decisions we have to look at, but also ultimately, right, it's the customer that drives this market, right? These vendors would not be consolidating if it wasn't the customer driving, saying, hey, these are the type of things that I need. Because having been on both sides of this in my career, I've been in identity for over 20 years, right? I've been a consultant, I've been a customer, I've been a vendor, I've been part of M&A. I've said in every single aspect of this, when I tell you vendors aren't going to do anything that customers aren't going to buy, period, right? And most of you have been a customer, if you sat on that side, like you know that, right? A vendor's not going to put a feature in there until they're very sure that a customer is going to purchase that feature. So vendors aren't going to consolidate and do this until they know that customers are going to purchase these products, right? So it's the same thing, right? They're not going to consolidate these products if they don't think customers are going to purchase them. So again, it's on the customers, on that purchasing power. So when you see these trends, it's telling you, because that's the market is wanting that. So you as the customers start to look at that and say, okay, well, this is where the trend is going. Start to look internally and go, okay, where do we need to position ourselves? Right? And starts having conversations. Where do we need to adjust and have our operations to make sure that we can take advantage of that?
And when we take advantage of that, and going back to the adaptability, right, of that adoption that David was talking about, it's interesting to think about MCP and MCP servers. It's almost a given, right? Every company, every vendor out there, they release their own MCP server in the last 6 months. It's crazy to think about MCP was invented by Anthropic just November last year. So it's the first anniversary of MCP, and I don't remember last time I saw a protocol spreading out like wildfire as quick as MCP did, which is pretty cool to see. But we see also alternatives, right? In that sense of A2A, there's UTCP coming out as well in a more grassroots vibe. It's something that we can imagine will be as transformative as API were for the cloud era, right? We are in this post-cloud. The cloud is not going away by any means, but the same way that APIs and was so important for the cloud to spread and became this mainstream thing that we see today or we know today, MCP has that power, right? Has that potential of becoming that. It's almost crazy to think about that speed that 3 months ago, and if you're 3 months almost feels legacy, right? So there's a new protocol coming up or another protocol coming up, which is quite different from my early days. David, you remember this when we especially in identity, right? How many protocols came in and just gone and they never caught up.
SPML.
What researchers, did you say SPML?
No,
Okay.
Dust.
Was it cold? Charleston yesterday?
Yeah, just,
What is interesting to see as well is, of course, researchers and other practitioners running tests on MCP and finding a lot of holes. Of course, everything that's new, we have this opportunity to fix, but 85 of attacks they tested against MCP were successful. And I'll tell you what, this is no secret. If you saw that report, a lot of those attacks, they were successful because of OAuth, right? OAuth as the mechanism used for identity authorization within MCP. So OAuth injection in particular, more than 43%, which is quite alarming. So what to do? Knowing that, number one, I think it's no way to reverse that. MCP is a good thing, but when you look at the fine print published by Anthropic, they say it's your job. It's your job to add security controls and identity controls to MCP. It's the developer's job. So if you are building AI agents today, if you're building AI applications using MCP, it's not Anthropic's. It's that shared responsibility, but they're very clear to say it's your job to protect that. So avoiding past mistakes of what we did with APIs is fundamental. And what I mean by past mistakes, APIs that use static keys. So the challenges we see today and a lot of vendors that exist today and just cleaning up that mess of toxic, yes, toxic elements and structures created by API, it's something that I plead you not repeat that same mistake. Using short-lived tokens, used more dynamic type of ways to authenticate and authorize MCP. We also can't wait for governing those things tomorrow. So as you build your apps using MCP, build them, protect them, govern them today. We can't afford to wait to, okay, 5 years from now, I'll build and then protect. No, protect as you build. Right. And of course, all the best practices of least privilege applies here, right? So no secret for us practitioners, but the same way that we were talking about the Ewoks, right? Let's not repeat the same mistakes of the past.
Yeah. And, these two trends, modern machine IAM and MCP are slightly related. Because I'll say this, right, as you look at this, and I get that, most of us are in the day-to-day grind, right? And so you may look at some of this and go, yeah, that's nice. I really don't have time to keep up with the MCP protocols or all these other protocols. I'm stuck, just trying to get, my admins to stop, rotating or to get them to rotate their passwords or do whatever it is that you have to do every day. But we all know like how this ends. It's business will decide to do something and make a decision, and then it all ends up on our desk to fix, right? Like it's just how it ends. Like it always ends up on us to fix. And so when we look at the things that's happening like with MCP and how fast it's moving and the ability to do this, it's going to come in. Developers are going to make these agents, are going to do these connections. And I want to emphasize on the point that they're building this protocol and saying it is on the developers to handle the authorization and authentication. And so if you've got developers in-house, they're going to go, oh, okay, great. Well, you know, somebody in our organization will handle that. And we all know who that is. It's going to be us. And they'll say, oh, okay, well, we'll use whatever we use with internally to go and handle that. So, you know, as much as you can, just kind of follow and understand what's going on with the MCP protocols. It's actually a pretty fun, you know, protocol to look and mess around with. So going into modern machine IAM, right? This is another one because you know, NHI, non-human identity, has been a really hot topic for the last I would say 2 years in identity. But for those of us who've been living in this world, right, this has been the mess that we have ignored for a decade, right? It's that whole thing that we walked into the room and said, oh my God. And we walked into our kids' room, we see all the toys and said, just put it in the closet and close the door for the love of God. I just put it in there. I just don't want to see it anymore. It's okay. And we just kept putting them in the closet. We kept putting it in the closet. We kept putting it in the closet. And it's like that one cartoon, you finally open the door and everything just came out, right? That has been NHI forever. But for whatever reason, finally, we decided to open the closet door. Well, now we're saying, okay, well, let's look at it. Like, what do we do with this mess? Why? Because we realized that, oh, wow, this is a whole mess. And this is how we connect all these applications and we do all these things. And it's so dynamic and we have no clue what anything is, but this is how we run a lot of our applications. And this is where a lot of our privileges. And oh, by the way, guess where the bad guys want to go to once they get in our network? Right over here. And guess what? We can't figure out who has access to what? Right over here. And oh, by the way, 70% of our secrets in 2022 are still active in 2025, and we have no clue who provisioned any of them.
Yikes.
Open the closet door, everything comes out, right? Right, leave it shut. Because then we could just say, I don't know what happened, right? CISO doesn't say that because they're gone. So, this area here, right, is going to continue to be a trend, right? Less than 10% of organizations have a mature NHI strategy, right? There is Spiffy and Inspire, right? This is a start, especially on the workload side, to be able to, again, as Integrate was talking about on MCP, right? Get away from the static API keys, right? And the long-lived and get more to a dynamic, ephemeral access with Spiffy Inspire. That is a start. Part of it is just the basic blocking and tackling of listen, we've got to start migrating, moving over to Spiffy, but also getting some visibility around your NHI. Guys, we got to start talking to our DevOps teams. We got to start doing something and saying, okay, listen, how are you going about and creating these secrets, getting some visibility and actually getting some control around that and getting life cycle around those. And I know that is not sometimes the ideal and sometimes it's just basics, but the biggest thing here, and I always compare this to what privileged access management was back in the day, right? And it has a very similar pattern. But the thing with privileged access management was, it was like 10 administrators. That was cool, but they weren't growing. It was just the same 10 administrators. And we were like, okay, cool. They all have admin access. We know those 10. It's not like we're hiring 10 more administrators every quarter. We're good. On this side, it's growing. We're constantly spinning up, creating new keys, doing more things. So it's like we can't just ignore it because it continues to grow. And that's the problem on the NHI side, why this one causes much more concern. Because while the PAM side was just stale and we could just put it aside and said, we'll get to it eventually, over here, it's continuing to grow with NHI. And so on this side, it's one of those concerns where you have to go in and say, listen, we have to get in front of this, govern what we can govern what we can govern now. And for the things that we don't know, we have to have a plan of how we're going to get coverage around it. And so where you can start to use things like Spiffy, I would encourage you to start to do those. If not, start having the conversations with your DevOps teams. Why? What's stopping you from doing this? Because if you don't, I'm telling you, it's setting yourself up for a very, very bad day.
You're setting yourself for something very bad. And how do we find those type of things, right? I had a colleague of mine, a Garner, Felix Gatingens, and he wrote something interesting on LinkedIn about all those static, long-lived things that we have to deal with. he compared that to asbestos, right? So it's almost like finding where we build houses using asbestos, this toxic type of things. So more than never, visibility becomes the central piece in 2025, 2026 in what we do in identity protection because, well, we don't even know. We don't even know where we build those houses using those toxic type of things. And that's just one of the problems, right? So even more fundamental things in governance. It's a fact that most organizations, they don't onboard all applications into their IAM programs. Not for SSO, not for governance, not for authentication, certification campaigns. A big chunk of apps where identities and entitlements reside are not even visible to most organizations. So visibility becomes this way and perhaps a goal of brand new categories created by, yes, my former employer, called things like IVIP. You asked me, did we need another acronym? I'll leave that to you. So IVIP, meaning identity, visibility, and intelligence platforms, which is, I would argue, very similar to ISPM and identity security posture management. The ultimate goal here, my people, is do a better job and improve our security posture, right? Of all the things that we do in cybersecurity, I think we all agree identity is that in the middle of it, right? In the middle of the hurricane. And if we do a good job in implementing controls and making sure that we can measure how those controls are implemented, I think that's the essence of both IVIP and things like ISPM as well. And when clients, they come back to us, and when I speak with leaders running identity programs, they say, well, 80% of them, they confess we're not doing a good job in just looking at those things. We don't know where the asbestos is. So what do we do? What do we do besides just buying more tools, right? So a very interesting and back to basics type of recommendation that I suggest is let's focus on identity data. And by that is, today, with advancements in AI and LLMs, we are capable of building these amazing security data lakes for getting all that data, but also the opportunity of cleaning up that data, making it more easy to manage, removing duplicates, but also finding trends and predicting where this thing's going to go. So starting with a mindset when we are implementing IAM programs with that data, and I know David is a big fan of that part of the looking at the actual data that is driving our identity decisions, it's already a good start. The second one is really and honestly assess your capabilities to speed up integrations. We all know AI can help with that too. It's not a magic bullet. A lot of the things that we're going to be doing in integration, for example, if you are integrating with Active Directory on premises, you don't need AI to do that. And you want something more deterministic to integrate with AD and monitor AD or just synchronize credentials and entitlements with AD. That's deterministic. But for all the other weird stuff that we're building, all those houses with asbestos, all these apps, that applications and other things that were built in a custom type of scenario, yes, AI can be very useful in helping you accelerate and discover and finding out where those things are being created. So we got to be realistic. What's the percentage of your attack surface is actually monitored today? And how fast can we be in just growing that scope, right? Not from 0 to 100, but just incrementally, just putting that as a goal as an IAM leader to grow that and assess how speed can be applied to that. And of course, making that a repeatable business. I was talking to a client the other day, David, and they said, yeah, we can do that. We have Tableau, and every time I need to make a decision, we get all this data and we run into Tableau. But Enrique, that is still very manual. right? It's like ingesting data, creating pivot tables, and getting data out. That's not ideal. So getting a way to automate that process, that is, a dashboard shows up every day and you see, okay, this is going bad, or the trend isn't going up. I think that's where we should aim our efforts.
Yep. And a quick aside, because I do love the data part, the intelligence, computer scientist, a nerd, right? I will say one of the cool things about where we are in this time, right? Yes, all the hype around LLMs. For those of you that, study any of these things, right? The cool thing about what LLMs have done is it has just made being able to do data science easier, right? I won't go into all the details, but the underlying things under LLMs have made it easier to the average person to be able to go and deploy machine learning models, right? So the ability for us to do things with that you don't have to be a data scientist to be able to go and deploy machine learning models now. So really cool stuff. We'll get into that, some other later. That's a time for a different talk. The last trend we'll talk about is AI governance, right? Because you can't have a keynote talk or any kind of talk this year without talking about AI. It's too early to take shots. Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but we won't. AI governance, right? So when you look at this, I have so many conversations with CIOs, CTOs this year. Every organization is struggling with this, right? They're all working on it. They're trying to figure out what an AI governance program looks like. How do I use this? How do I bring this into my organization? What do we do, right? Because if you're an organization, you've been told that you have to do it, voluntold, right? And trust me, if your organization isn't using it yet, it's because you haven't had your board meeting yet, and considering we're in Q4, like you probably should have had it. All of your leaders have been told, you will do this, right? And if they haven't been told you will do it, they're going to be told you will do it, and they're trying to figure out how. This is just something that, for whatever reason, all the reasons, right? It is part of our ecosystem now. And I've probably 5 different CISOs have told me, like, this is what keeps me up at night. I know that I have to roll this out, and I've rolled it out, and I have no clue what these things are doing. I have no clue how I'm going to manage any of this. And I know that I'm going to wake up one day and this is the thing that's going to get me fired. But what do? My boss tells me I got to roll it out, so I rolled it out. Right? Welcome to the world of being a CISO. Who wants to sign up for that job? Nobody? Anybody? Oh, okay. So what do we do, right? When we look at this, right, extend your identity program to include AI. We have to, right? We have to look at them at AI because these things have entitlements, they have permissions, they have sources, right? So it's an identity just like anything else. We have to start looking at an identity as a digital identity. If it has access within your enterprise, it is an identity, right? Human, non-human, carbon-based, it doesn't matter. If it has access within your enterprise, vendor, contractor, alien, Martian, doesn't freaking matter. If it accesses anything, it is an identity, right? I know a lot of you are Active Directory folks. I'm not going to take that battle today. Doesn't matter, right? If it touches Active Directory in any given way, it's a digital identity within your system. It needs to be included in your program, right? So start understanding what's the life cycle of it. What does it touch? How do I assign access to it? How do I remove access to it? And apply least privilege at every single time, right? Does it need to have this access? What's the least amount of access that it has? And then oversight, review, and validation. It's no different, that basic blocking and tackling every single time. Just because it thinks on its own, quote unquote, doesn't mean we treat it any differently. Same thing. So when we look at this, right, in the words of the infamous Marshawn Lynch, stay ready so we ain't got to get ready. When we start looking forward to 2026, it's platformization, right? We're seeing all these things come together, these companies come together. We've seen this before, we'll see it again. 10 years from now, all these companies will break apart. Then 20 years from now, they'll come together. All of us will be retired, so it doesn't matter. So this will all be problems for our kids. The rise of MCP, it is happening. This protocol is moving so fast that it is crazy, allowing AI agents to talk to each other. Please pay attention to that because trust me, it's going to wind up at your door. When all these developers create all these things for all these agents to talk to each other with all these different applications, and then they can't figure out how it's all going to be authenticated, they're going to come to the AD administrator and go, here you go. I need to single sign on to all these things. Thank you. It's coming, right? Along with that, the modern machine, IAM, check out Spiffy. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it'll at least help you to start understanding from workloads. And the cool thing that I do like about Spiffy is that doesn't matter. It goes across cloud environments, right? So it gives your workloads unique identifier so you can understand and say from workload to workload across, Oracle, Google, whatever, you can actually have a get an identifier. Visibility and intelligence. We've talked about visibility for so long, but the actual intelligence to understand what is this data that I'm looking at. And finally, AI governance, right? It's AI is just another digital identity. You got to put it in that life cycle. So those recommendations, that's what you're looking forward to going in 2026. Those are some of the trends that we see going forward. Obviously, there's going to be others. With that, we appreciate all the time. Have a wonderful time in Charlotte. I'm kind of upset that we didn't get the theater talk, but it's all good.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody.
And
David, Enrique.
thank you. And Han shot first.
Han shot first.
We have a few more minutes for some questions.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. Yeah.
I
So
know.
folks, this was amazing. This was amazing. I definitely like the insight. Any questions from you? Oh, come out, Mike. Yeah, Mike goes to the mic. Yeah.
So I have a question about MCP. You mentioned that it is a protocol which allows talking between the agents, right? My understanding, there is another one which is agent to agent, and it was proposed by Google, but MCP is not talking to agents. It is just exposing the tools API. Is this? Let me ask my question. What do you think about agent to agent protocol? Because it is not mentioned here.
No. It is all of those protocols, right? So I think it's undeniable, especially if you have billions of dollars of Anthropic supporting MCP adoption. I think that may be one of the things they became or made it more popular. I think we're gonna have to see, right? So I mentioned UTPC, for example, right, or A2A. To your point, I think they are applicable with different type of reasons and capacities. So for example, MCP as exposing APIs in a way which become more conversational. Now, I think perhaps a more interesting question and I hate answering your question with another question, but I think it's to think about what's missing in those protocols, including A2A, including UTPC, including MCP, is that they are not adding a layer of identity security in any of them. It's our job, right? I think that's if there's one takeaway from that rise of MCP, is that regardless of the protocol we choose, we got to think of how and what additional layers of identity security we need to add there.
And they answer this question. They say that MCP is not an additional API. It is built on top of HTTP APIs we already have, and authentication we already have in place. My question, probably next one, is that is what we use, right? MCP are not bringing anything new to this picture. They just say use existing APIs and give these APIs to LLMs, to agents, in a way which allows agents to use them. But there's nothing new. So my question is, why is we kind of so maybe excited about this? It is just a regular API. So what's different about MCP is comparing to regular HTTP REST API? Still OAuth, still authentication, still authorization in place. JWT token. Let's do it right? So what's new about MCP? Maybe this is the question.
I love it. I love it. But you know why I love it may not be the reason why you think I love it. I love it is because we see that too, David. A lot of vendors and tools and practitioners say, now my tool is AI driven. And what is that? No, it's the same old tool you always had before wrapped up on an MCP wrapper, right? So I love it because of that. Are we thinking of that as a way to retrofit legacy stuff and sell this as new? Or are we using this really for interoperability? So I think there's the right way of using tools. There's the wrong way, like a hammer on a nail is a good way, but a hammer on a screw is not a good way.
I like it, by the way, because actually, in my personal opinion, it is not about API keys and about legacy stuff, which we actually know how to do right with MCP. The danger is we should communicate with them differently.
Yeah.
By using different techniques, and these techniques actually allow different types of attacks, which are not about authorization. This is, in my opinion.
Thank you. 3 seconds to go.
sorry.
Do we have more time to other questions, or this is it?
I'll first of all say that Mike, take the opportunity and grab Enrique and David later to go even deeper on that. Let's take that last question because at 10 we've got the next session coming up. So one more.
Highlands.
At the risk of a comment versus a question, it actually answers the question on the MCP challenge. MCP fundamentally is a delegation of authorization, which OAuth natively does not handle well. If you look at the history of OAuth, we attempted to create a profile for OAuth called UMA, called User Managed Access. Well, in this case, it'd be non-user managed access.
Right.
The challenge with MCP today is it is delegating access, and there's no life cycle in the protocol to manage that.
Yeah.
That's where the governance challenge is.
I agree, Lance. And it's it's a perhaps first and a half draft of that protocol. I don't see Anthropic changing in a way to add that into the protocol. So it's not only delegating access, but it's delegating to us the responsibility of adding that control. I think looking at what OAuth 2.1 can add in addition, but also the life cycle is not even there, right? I agree 100%. So, and I think that was the takeaway of that particular piece of the talk as well, is to have that conversation. MCP is not a silver bullet and all. There's a lot of missing pieces in there, and it's our job to build those missing pieces into it.
Great answer. Thanks again, David, Enrique, and
You've been great. Thank you, guys.
thanks for being here.